Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 237 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and a two-time author. Our second book, From Letters to Leaders, Redefining New Member Education and Leveraging Belonging to Eliminate Hazing, is available now at Amazon. So go and pick up that book today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there's nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, I have never in my life been hypnotized, but I've seen it hundreds of times at many of the conventions and the conferences that I speak at. And usually I'm finding students that want to laugh at people doing silly things up on stage. I'm actually fascinated by the whole thing, and I do think it has value to heal physical and emotional pain. So we are going to explore the world of hypnosis today, and I can't be more excited than I already am. Our next guest is Mahesh Grossman. He is a clinically certified hypnotherapist on a mission to let the world know how valuable hypnosis is for pain relief, both physical and emotional pain, as well as how it makes a huge difference for many medical conditions. And he does this through seeing clients in person, via Skype or Zoom, through his blog, and as a pain management and hypnosis expert for the Huffington Post. Welcome to the show, Mahesh.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, it's great meeting you and great talking to you. As soon as we met online, I said, man, this sounds like a great topic for our college students because I know that they've seen hypnosis or they've heard about hypnosis and they have all of these questions. So I'm like, let's just bring Mahesh on the show and we'll get them all answered, right?
Yeah, well, that's great. And also, I specialize in anxiety. And a study just came out in March. During the 2 weeks of the study, 82% of college students said they had experienced an anxiety disorder in the previous week.
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, with everything that's going on, I mean, first we got through the pandemic. So, now that's like a 2+ year event. Now we have this war that's being waged in Ukraine of all places. And now we have college students that are literally coming to me and saying, Mike, am I going to be drafted to go and have to go to a war in Ukraine? I mean, these are the things, anxiety right now. I mean, with the economy, with the war, all of these different things, these are weighing really heavily on college students. So I'm so glad that your hypnosis is something that could potentially address this anxiety.
Great.
Yeah, this is really good. I want to make sure that our students know a little bit more about your background because I know you decided on Columbia University in New York, a fantastic school for your education. So why was Columbia the right choice for you?
I applied to like 3 Ivy League schools, and Columbia was the one that let me in, and they were in Manhattan. And at the time, I also applied to a school called New College in Sarasota, Florida, which was pass-fail with written evaluations, and you graduated in 3 years. And that was very appealing to me until my AP math teacher said, you got into Columbia, you need to go to Columbia. So that was how I decided.
Thank goodness that you had that teacher that advised you to go to Columbia, because I agree completely with that teacher. Going to Columbia is a unique opportunity and you got to grab it while you can. Fantastic school. And as somebody who was born in Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan, Columbia, I'm like, all right, let's go. I mean, that's the place to be.
And ultimately, at some point, I wanted to write Broadway musicals. And so at Columbia, Ed Claiborne, who wrote a chorus line, came and spoke. And he said, there's this workshop I was in called the BMI Musical Theater Workshop. And I asked him afterwards, how do you get in? And he told me what to do. And I got into this workshop where like Maury Eston, who wrote 9, taught us the second year. Lehman Hagel was actually this famous guy who had conducted all these Broadway musicals and had written books on how to write a Broadway musical, but he died after my first year. So we had a Broadway composer, lyricist, teaching us the second year. And everyone in that workshop was invited to attend the ASCAP workshop, where we were hanging out with Stephen Sondheim and Michael Bennett and Donna McKechnie from A Chorus Line. It was like the who's who of musical theater.
Wow, what a time to be alive.
That's my favorite thing about Columbia, actually.
Yeah, I mean, what a time to be alive, and what a great group of people to have as influencers. I mean, boy, oh boy, oh boy. I mean, talk about who's who. They're all hanging out together on Broadway over there. I mean, fantastic stuff. That sounds really fun. Now, you are a clinically certified hypnotherapist, and you want to let everybody know how valuable hypnosis is for pain relief. So I'm just curious, what made you want to be a hypnotherapist of all things?
It's whenever I talked, my friends would fall asleep. So I figured I might as well get paid for it. But the truth is, I had all these studies in somatic psychological work and psychodrama, things I had done. And I was in a meditation group, and this woman who was a therapist said, hey, the California Psychology Board is going after people who do things even when they say they're not a psychotherapist. So you better protect yourself. And so I looked at the law, and the law said, when it comes to the subconscious, hypnotherapists are exempt from this law, protecting people from this stuff. So I looked into hypnosis, and I discovered something really interesting, because some of the techniques I learned at hypnosis school were exactly the same techniques I had already learned from other people, but they worked so much better when you had somebody more relaxed in more of a trance state. And a trance state is a fairly normal state. We get caught up with the word trance, but really anytime we concentrate heavily, we're in a trance. If you're reading a book and somebody calls your name and you don't answer, you've been hypnotized. And actually, you really have been hypnotized anyway, because if you're the type of person where the book says she saw a gray rock castle with a cherry red door, and you see that gray rock castle with a cherry red door, that's hypnosis. You have been looking at splotches of black ink on a piece of paper, and you're seeing this whole world. The only difference is, instead of reading it, if we were working together, I'd say, Mike, picture a gray rock castle with a cherry red door, and you'd see it that way. Sure. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So people think hypnosis is this really big, intense thing, but because they see the stage shows that you see.
Yeah.
And it's not like that at all for most people. The thing is, the people who do the stage hypnosis, they've been trained to pick out certain kinds of people who want to have that kind of experience, who want to show off a little bit, and there's certain things that may show that you're hypnotizable, but it's not just that. It's also that you want to be kind of in the center of attention on a stage. Yeah. And so they know that. I was one of the people picked at a show in Virginia once, and I got off the stage after the first 5 minutes, and I'm really hypnotizable. I once heard my daughter told me this story, and later she told it again. I said, oh yeah, I was there. And she said, Dad, you weren't there. I was hypnotized into, I saw it so completely in my mind that I thought I'd actually been there during the event, but I wasn't. So I'm very hypnotizable. So those stage hypnosis people, they're picking people who want to be on stage. Gotcha. On some level.
Are there some people that can't be hypnotized, or can anybody be hypnotized?
I would say 95% of people can be hypnotized. There are people who can't see things in their mind. There's I think it's called aphantasia. I don't remember exactly what it's called, because aphantasia, it may be aphantasia. Mm-hmm. I'm confusing that with what Bruce Willis has, which I guess is aphasia. Mm-hmm. It's called aphantasia. And you can still be hypnotized if you can't see things in your mind. But there's some people who are less imaginative. I had one potential client, he never actually worked out, who was on a dialysis. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to work with me around getting rid of the itchy feeling he had when he had dialysis. And he would never itch during the days off. And I asked him the questions I normally ask. He never got lost on the freeway, and I missed an exit on his freeway because he got caught up in his thoughts. He never actually felt sad when bad things happened in a movie to the main character, or happy. When he always knew it was a movie. And I thought, oh my God, this guy is so unhypnotizable. But as we were talking about itching over and over again, he says, I don't understand. Why am I itching right now? Because on one of the days where because he was hypnotized into itching himself just by the conversation. So even he was hypnotizable. He wouldn't have been the best client probably, but he definitely caught himself itching. I have a quiz. If people go to my website, berkeleyhypnosis.com, I have a quiz that will tell you how hypnotizable you are.
That's very cool. I know all the students are going to hit your website right now. My big fear is that because I'm kind of a control freak. So my question is, will I give up control during hypnosis? Will I remember what happens to me under hypnosis?
You'll remember as much. Most people don't go that. You don't have to work that deeply with someone to get things to happen. And for me, when I work, it's much more of a conversation, because I need to know what's going on, because it's happening inside your head. Mm-hmm. And I also need to kind of point you in certain directions. So I'm a much more conversational hypnotherapist than maybe people who do a very strict type of hypnosis where they're doing all the talking. But the truth is, you're going to remember some of it. You're not going to remember all of it because, well, if we had an hour conversation not under hypnosis, you still wouldn't remember all of it, right?
That's true. So, that's very true. So,
but yeah, you're totally in control. You're not going to do something you wouldn't ordinarily do in hypnosis. That's why the stage hypnotists pick the people who have this exhibitionist quality.
I got you. So, but I guess my question is, how can hypnosis, which obviously focuses on your mind, how does that now affect the health of your body?
Well, your mind and your body are really connected. So, and there's a lot of there's a whole psychological side to pain and things like that. So like John Sarno was this back doctor, and one day he looked at two sets of people who had surgery on their spines, and only 50% of the people were helped by the surgery. And there was absolutely no difference between the original, the set of people who the surgery was a success for, and the set of people who surgery wasn't successful for. So he had to, he discovered that there's a lot of times there's old childhood stuff that's connected to these things. And the other thing is the mind and the body are connected. And hypnosis, as Stanford MRIs made it very clear in 2016, in August of 2016 in Time magazine, there's an article about the MRIs, that your mind and your body get more connected during hypnosis. And you can tell this because if I ask you to picture yourself right now in a roller coaster at the very top, about to go down, you will probably get tense, unless you're one of the people who gets excited by a thrill person, in which case you'll get excited.
Yeah, I'm getting excited.
You instantly do that. Yeah. I haven't even put you into a trance and you did it. No. So it's very normal. And the other thing is, the way I work is, I call myself a somatic hypnotherapist, which means I'm helping you using tension in your body as a doorway to opening you up to what's really underneath the surface. So I'll ask you, if you say you come in and you say, such and such makes me anxious, I'll say, think about that for a second, and then notice the sensation you're carrying in your body and where you feel it in your body right now. And I'm an empath, so I usually feel it too. So if somebody's having a little trouble identifying it, I'll say, hey, notice your stomach, because my stomach is all tight. And I know it wasn't tight before we started working together. So that's kind of how it works. And once you do that, you can get back to the past, because then you can ask yourself, how old was I the first time I had this kind of strange, tense sensation in my belly? Where was I? Who was I with? What was going on? And that becomes a really amazing doorway to healing something from the past that could be affecting you right now. I've noticed with IBS, people who have irritable bowel syndrome, and a lot of times that's college students. What I've noticed is they're trying really, there's like this message they got that they had to be really good at school. That there's this perfectionism in a sense, in order to be loved, I have to be perfect. And, it's not purposely communicated by our parents, but, the people who did really good at school, there's something typically that's going on there as well.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I think you're absolutely right. I see it in my own kids who are Gen Z getting ready for college. They both want to be perfect at everything. And, and I made a million mistakes when I was in college. I made mistakes as the executive director of my fraternity. I make mistakes today as the CEO of Greek University. And because of those mistakes, I will be successful. But, but it's interesting how today's college students feel pressure to be perfect all the time. And I'm like, what? I make mistakes all the time. I own
Yeah.
them. I own them,
Yeah.
but somehow we have to normalize that.
I just read something online. This woman talked about her father, who made a point of asking them every week, what did you fail at this week? And he was a little disappointed if they didn't fail at something.
Yeah.
And they learned that, if you don't try, you don't fail. And if you don't fail, you don't succeed. And
that's it. I mean, you literally fail your way forward in some cases. And so maybe that's the question I need to ask them is, what did you fail at this week? And then I think it teaches them, right? I mean, they figure out what they need to do better next time in order to have a better outcome. So that's a good question. I like that. I'm going to use that. That's really good. Now, a lot of the college students that are listening right now, they have gone through some trauma in their life. We can talk about ACEs and all of those things. In your practice, you somehow release the leftover tension, emotions, and unsaid words that we subconsciously stored in our body when we were traumatized. And then you somehow unrepress the self-love, the confidence, and the permission to be ourselves that we shut down in order to be safe from trauma happening to us again. So is this something that you do once and suddenly I'm cured after the trauma? Or is this something that's like recurring that you have to do over and over again over a long period of time for your patients?
Well, the answer is kind of both.
Okay.
So a lot of people who've had trauma in their life, it wasn't just one kind of thing, right? It's a multifaceted experience. Mm-hmm. So generally with each session, we get to some piece of that. So I have a client who's been with me for a number of years, and he had this fear of being touched. And it wasn't sexual abuse either. It was a lack of trust. And we did that in one session. We did this piece of work where we discovered the metaphor, and he literally had to, when his wife would hug him, he would count to 10 so that she wouldn't feel bad if he pushed her away. But he wasn't holding his breath, but it was almost like he was holding his breath. And when we ended the session, we had reached kind of the core wound and worked through that. And I have a course that teaches this method called Defy Trauma at defytrauma.com. And it's a 5-step process where you start off with what is it that upsets you? Then you do the thing that I mentioned earlier, which is notice where you feel it in your body and ask yourself, well, what was happening and what's that about? And then we do some work, and there are different steps involved. But one of the ways we release it is through imagining something like a magician's hat. And so like if you notice a place where you hold tension right now in your body, then picture putting a magician's hat there with a handkerchief in it. And you know the trick with the handkerchiefs? Everybody knows this trick. I don't know why they know it anymore, because I haven't seen it on TV in decades. But you pull on the handkerchief and you just keep pulling on the handkerchief until there's no more handkerchiefs left. And that releases the tension. So that's kind of one of the steps. But there's sometimes there are complications. Sometimes we have blocks. Sometimes we got messages that we weren't even allowed to like criticize our father. I just had somebody who wasn't allowed to receive compliments because their mother. We have these internalized parents, right? We have this inner mother and this inner father. None of my work affects the outer parents that are alive, but inside we're carrying these parents with us. And so we had somebody say that he was handsome and it felt really uncomfortable for him. And so I said, well, is that your discomfort or does it belong to your mom or your dad? And he said, it's my mother. And so we talked to his internalized mother, and it's in these, it's a very light trance state. It's very easy to do. And I said, Mom, is it okay with you if, I think this guy's 66 years old. Is it okay with you if I have a compliment? She said no. And so I know that usually means somebody else said it's not okay. So I had him ask her to, is it because of you, or is it something else? Like, is it because you're scared Dad is going to have a problem? She said, Dad. So then we imagined Dad showing up. We said, Dad, is it okay if I get a compliment? And he said, sure. And then we said, Mom, did you hear that? And she said, yes. And then after that, we tested, and I said, you're very handsome. And he was great. He was totally comfortable with it.
Nice.
We have these crazy little inner blocks, and we're carrying fake messages because they're not alive. They're not the people we're carrying the messages from are our mom and dad from when we were 5 years old or something. And they look entirely different now, and we look entirely different now, but it's still inside us.
So fascinating. And, I looked at all the different tools that you use when you work with people. You use neuro-linguistic programming, emotional freedom technique, or tapping, for example. Bilateral stimulation, voice dialogue, psychodrama. All of these different tools. What are all of these tools, and how do they help you?
Well, at this point, I'm using a subset of those. So, EFT is tapping, and you tap on yourself and it calms you down. It affects kind of acupressure points, and you say certain words. But I found that I've narrowed things down to what I call my 5-step trauma detox process. And that uses somatic therapy is just being aware of the tension in your body, right? So there's that. Psychodrama is the dialogues. So we will, a lot of the time I use a fill in the blank sentence. Blank, you really hurt me when you blank. So Mom or Dad, you really hurt me when you criticize me all the time. And what's really interesting in the psychodramatic part is the dad or mom that you're seeing in your mind, they may say, well, I did it for your own good. But it's just a part of ourselves, right? This is not happening in the outer world. This is something we inherited. So we have to work with the mom or dad to get to the point where they are going to say, I'm sorry, I love you, you're a great kid, I should have never done that. Because really, it's a part of ourselves that needs to say, I'm sorry, I love you, you're a great kid, to ourselves. So those are kind of the techniques. Voice dialogue is really what I described earlier with the parents, the inner parents, and having the dialogue between them. And one of my favorite things to do, which I think every therapist should do at the end of a session, and I don't do it every session, but I do it a lot of sessions, is there's a shamanic process called the Soul Retrieval, which is a name I really hate. Because what it really is when bad things happen to us, we squish parts of ourselves. And so we lose like our self-love, our sense of safety, our confidence, our creativity. And so what we need to do is unsquish that part that we used to have. So we're not actually retrieving something, we're unsquishing it. So I have a technique that I like to call the birthday present. It's really not a birthday present, but it's very evocative. You can see it right in front of you when I say birthday present. You can, so I have people, either there's someone we did a dialogue with and they hand them a present, or we just go to a beautiful place and see a picnic table. And on the picnic table, and you can do this right now if you want, on the picnic table is a beautifully wrapped present. And that present always has a ribbon. And it's always, in spite of my best hopes, it's always the pull kind of ribbon, cloth ribbon, and not the stick-on type that I use. And so I have people pull the ribbon, they open the present, and inside is something that's symbolic, that that represents a quality that they had. So if you were to open a present right now, you might see something, and it could be something. I had a bald client who had a hairbrush that he had when he had feathered hair, and it represented a kind of joy. The best story I have about this step in the process is I worked with a woman whose first husband was verbally abusive. Her second husband had been murdered at work.
Oh my
Somebody
God.
went postal at work, and she had been depressed for 20 years.
Yeah.
So we got to this step, and she opened the present, and rubies were inside. And I asked, rubies are pretty obvious. Well, they represented love.
Yeah.
The redness and the heart and the love. And the last question I always ask is, ask the rubies if there's anything they need from you in order to stay with you forever. And the rubies said to her, you need to allow love in. And then I asked her, are you willing to do that? And she said, no. And I love no. No is yes is great too. But no means we're going to do a piece of work that's essential for you. So we did the typical work, kind of the 5-step trauma detox process, and mostly the remove inner blocks step, which is a lot of the voice dialogues. And she got to a point where she was willing to allow love in, and we imagined the rubies going inside her body, and she had this nice relaxed experience, and she looked just like any other client at the end of a session. Everybody's usually quite relaxed, and I thought nothing of it. But and she'd been coming in wearing like what you'd wear the day you do your laundry every single session, and the next week she came in all put together, and I was like, she said, yeah, I had dinner with my son, and he said he didn't recognize me. She'd been depressed for 20 years. He was 29. He hadn't seen her undepressed since he was 9.
Wow.
So the depression was gone because she's willing to allow love. And she had cut herself off from allowing, not outer love, just normal everyday enjoyment and pleasure, and allowing herself to love herself. Wow. For 20 years. And that's what ended her depression.
Wow. 20 years. I mean, that's a long time to go through that kind of depression, but I'm happy that through hypnosis, she found a way out. And man, oh man, a lot of the college students that are listening right now, I know that they are experiencing a ton of anxiety. And you describe the magician's hat and pulling on the handkerchief. You also talk about hypnotic underwear, which I don't even know what that is. But how do these things lower your anxiety in, let's say, 60 seconds? Is it doing what you described?
Well, a lot of them work directly on removing the energy that's kind of stuck in your body. So I'll tell you briefly, the hypnotic underwear technique is, so the way you get over anxiety about a particular thing, as opposed to general anxiety, is like if you're afraid to do something, is you have to do it. And it's exposure therapy is what it's called. Mm-hmm. Exposure therapy sucks. Right? It's because you get super anxious and it's really hard to do. So you need a middle step. And so in my 1-minute anxiety solution ebook, I have 57 different ways to lower your anxiety. One of them that I've used is the hypnotic underwear trick. It can be any article of clothing, really. It's really hard to do something that makes you anxious when the anxiety sits in your torso. The farther you can get it away from your torso, the better. So if you can move that anxiety down, say you feel it in your belly and you want to move it down, you can move it down to your waist, and then you just imagine it's like a pair of underwear that you're pulling down and off, and that will lower the anxiety, or at least get it away. When I first created this thing for myself, it was just, if I can get it down to my knees, that's good enough. Right. That's better than, but with clients, I started doing it all the way. And the other thing is you can go up, so you can, take a t-shirt off, and that does the same thing. Or let's say you feel it in your throat, you can imagine you have a scarf and you're pulling off the scarf. So it works. That's how that works. One thing I like to do for worrying and overthinking is that you imagine unzipping your forehead right here, and you imagine a cash register tape. And so if you're stuck in a worry loop, you imagine the tape of, and you start pulling out. You don't need your hands. You can just imagine pulling this tape until there's no more left and tossing it into the sun. And it totally takes people out of worry.
Fascinating. That's so cool. Now, there are times when we wake up feeling depressed. I mean, I've felt that from time to time. So how can we feel calm? How can we wake up happy? How can we open up our eyes in the morning with a smile instead of the depression?
Well, you won't wake up with a smile. But you can get there. If there's a technique that I did this for years. And so when we go to sleep, whatever is running around in our subconscious mind kind of brings up old stuff that we haven't dealt with. And so it's still in our body. And so you can wake up feeling like, God, I don't want to have to live. It's another day and I don't want to go through it. But it's in our body. So one of the techniques, you can use this magician's hat, and I'll tell you another one in a second. But so if you can notice where you feel tension in your body, you can just release it using, say, the magician's hat from each of those places. And when you do, you suddenly it's like, oh, this is just as good a day as this is no worse than any other day. I'm fine. I mean, if you have difficult things going on in your life, you may need to do something else. But if you're just feeling, malaise, then this is going to work. The other way is if you're not totally in touch with, sensation in your body, there are 4 places where I would recommend you just do it as a practice. So your throat, your neck right here, your chest right here, your solar plexus, which is right under your, right where your ribs are, and your belly. And if you do that, and it doesn't take very long, you can do it with your eyes closed. You can do it while you're holding somebody. Nobody's going to know. But if you do that for a little bit, suddenly everything changes. The other way I do it is I have people imagine a zipper in the place where they have it, and I call it zipper surgery. And people will see things like sludge or rubber bands or rocks or feces. They'll see different things in the different places, and I just have them remove it either with their hands or a pail and shovel, or a shop vac is a favorite, or a regular vacuum. If you don't know what a shop vac was, I didn't know what one was until somebody brought it up, and I finally looked it up online. So yeah, that'll change things.
Wow, that's really cool. I love all of that. This has been so helpful for me to understand a little bit more about hypnosis. I think it's just really important work that you're doing. So I absolutely love all of it. Now, we do love good food here at the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. So if I end up speaking in the Richmond, California area, where should I go for a great meal?
Well, I'm going to send you to Berkeley, which is right next door, to a place called Anchele.
Right.
And I call it a 0-star Michelin restaurant, because Michelin recommends restaurants without giving you stars. And so I had a friend I used to go all over we would go to all the 0-star restaurants. And this was one that was less expensive. And they have a really great peanut sauce. And I forget the name of the dish right now, but it's the sauce with vegetables and tofu and peanut sauce. And if you're a vegetarian, they have a complete separate vegetarian menu with all the different dishes they have. So as a vegetarian, I love that. And their tonkatsu soup is really good too.
Fantastic. That sounds really good. My daughter is a vegetarian, so she's going to appreciate that. And I do visit Berkeley quite often. I work with the students on campus there all the time. So
wow.
I'm going to go and check that out. That sounds fantastic.
Great.
This has been really good. So if our audience, if they want to connect with you to speak on their college campus, let's say they want to pick up your book, it's called The 1 Minute Anxiety Solution, 57 Ways to Lower Your Anxiety, Take Back Your Life, and Get Back to Your Pre-Anxiety Self. Where should they go to connect with you and pick up the book?
Okay, so the book is at 1minuteanxietysolution.com, and that's spelled out. BerkeleyHypnosis.com is kind of the main place. And they can follow me on TikTok and Instagram, more Instagram these days, at Mahesh Grow, MAHESHGRO.
Fantastic. I love that you're on TikTok. I think it's a great vehicle to get, especially to the younger students. I think it's fantastic. So, wow, I've learned a ton. I really appreciate all the work that you do. I think it's important. And I'm so glad that you're able to share that with all of our college students today. So thank you.
Thank you. This was fun.
Yeah, this is a good time. So I know that our students absolutely loved it. So if you loved this conversation with Mahesh Grossman, make sure that you like it, make sure that you share it with other college students. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much, and we will see you next time.